In this video, you will hear from Dr. Joseph Volpicelli, leading naltrexone expert researcher and physician. According to the Sinclair Method protocol, when should naltrexone be taken? And for how many hours am I protected after taking naltrexone?
I use my slide. So, Katie, I think to really understand about proper dosing for naltrexone and how often to take it, when to take it, and when to retake it if you have a long drinking episode, I think it's important to understand how naltrexone works in the body, how the body handles it. So, when you take naltrexone orally, it first gets absorbed in the GI tract. And if you look at the slide, that would be represented by this part of the curve. This would measure the naltrexone levels in the serum over time, hours. And so you can see in this slide, this is a typical example of someone who takes 50 milligrams of naltrexone. At about 1 hour, the person reaches a peak level of naltrexone. So that's when it's at the absolute highest. Now, this absorption is going to vary by individual. It also varies if a person has something to eat that could slow down the absorption. And that may help explain why for some people, if they get side effects, if they eat something while they take the naltrexone, the level doesn't get as high a peak. It gets absorbed more slowly, so it takes longer to get to the peak, and the peak is lower. So once it gets to a peak, then the naltrexone gets metabolized or broken down by the body. And that mostly occurs in the liver. And this is an example, and a fairly typical example of someone who's metabolizing naltrexone at a rate of about, we call it a half-life of about 4 hours. So at 4 hours after the peak, half the naltrexone is gone from your system, from your body. So it goes from 10 to about a 5. Another 4 hours later, it's reduced in half again, so it's about 2.5. And you can see how the curve is reduced over time. So you want to keep the blood level of naltrexone above a certain level. And the idea is the level is probably around 2. It may be 1, it might be 2. This also depends on the kind of alcohol that you take. So if you're taking distilled spirits, you might need a little bit more naltrexone to get a good blocking effect. So that would be a level of 2. For something like beer, maybe a level of 1 is as high a level as you need to block the effects of alcohol. And so for this person, they're probably protected by for about 10 hours after taking their dose of naltrexone. So it takes a while to get absorbed. So if you wait an hour, you're optimizing when you have the level of naltrexone in your system, but probably in 40 minutes or so, you already have a sufficiently high level that it's going to block the effect of alcohol. And for this person, at about 10 hours, you're getting to the point where the naltrexone may no longer be effective, particularly if they're having something like whiskey or tequila. Having said that, there are some people who metabolize naltrexone much faster. So the half-life could be as low as 1 hour. And so for that person, 1 hour after the peak, they're already down to about a level of 5. And by a couple of half-lives later, by 2 or 3 hours, they're below that 2, that level of 2. And so for that person, they might want to redose on naltrexone at that point. It's important to keep in mind that there's tremendous variability among people. Now, maybe one of these days we'll be able to do a blood test or look at your genes and be able to identify which people are rapid metabolizers and the people that are slow metabolizers, and we would be able to tell you before you even take the naltrexone how you should best take it. But for now, we're down to sort of trial and error. You just have to find what's the right dose that when you drink alcohol, you no longer feel that high, the euphoria, the increased energy that you get when you normally don't take the naltrexone. So I hope that helps explain that.
Yeah, it really does to have a general idea of, how quickly naltrexone is absorbed and then metabolized in the system. And I wanted to ask you, because I just have this very vivid memory when I took naltrexone following the Sinclair method. There was one time that I took it and I waited 40 minutes. I thought it was an hour, but it wasn't. and I felt the euphoric, buzzy effects of alcohol that I hadn't been feeling for months before that. And so, what happened for me in that case? Am I more of a slower metabolizer? Would you say that I could feel that after 40 minutes?
Yeah, you're probably a slower absorber.
Okay,
So
slower absorber.
do you remember if on that day you had something to eat before you took the naltrexone?
I don't believe I did because I was going out to dinner and I had that
Oh,
first drink and I remember going, "Ooh, I like this."
yes, yeah. So you probably didn't reach that peak yet. And so for you, your body absorbs the naltrexone maybe more slowly than someone else. And so you have to really wait that hour, maybe even 90 minutes before you drink.
Okay. And then that explains as well why some people just anecdotally over the years, they'll tell me, man, I noticed if I wait 90 minutes or 2 hours, naltrexone seems to work a lot better than if I wait the hour.
Exactly right. So for those individuals, they're probably a slow absorber of the naltrexone, and so it takes a while to get up to that therapeutic level. And then keep in mind, this also complicates the picture that even though you have the naltrexone in your blood, where it really does its effective work is in your brain. And we haven't measured the naltrexone level in the brain. So even if you have a good therapeutic level in the blood, it still may take a while for the naltrexone to cross the blood-brain barrier and get into those, um, the opiate receptors in the brain to help block the effects of alcohol. So it takes even a little bit longer than what the blood level would tell you.
Okay. And what we're looking at here is the blood level specifically, the plasma
That's
blood
correct.
level. Okay.
Yes. And
Fascinating.
to further complicate the picture, we want to have high levels of naltrexone in the brain area, and the metabolism of naltrexone is what is measured in the blood. And so it could be the brain level of naltrexone is still higher than what you see in the blood.
I
So
agree.
again, we still have a lot more research to do. And at this point, a lot of it is still sort of trial and error. What works for you?
Okay, very interesting. And also just continues to speak to the importance of how this needs to be personalized or individualized to each person because everyone's body is different.
And let me just sort of reinforce for people who hear this that it's important to go over all this with your doctor, with your physician, because there could be interactions between naltrexone and other medicines, although I don't believe that there's any strong interactions. But for each person, the absorption and metabolism could vary. And it's really important to go over the dosing and the timing of the dose with your physician to help give you the optimal effectiveness of the naltrexone.
Absolutely. And that's something I've observed when someone's working with a doctor. They'll just keep checking in with the physician, and the physician will get the feedback and then kind of tweak the timing and dosing as needed. So, yeah, ideally working with someone who's really knowledgeable and can kind of work until you find your right dosing regimen.
Yeah, and I just want to add that some people report that the naltrexone is not working for them. But before you conclude that, it's important to make sure that you have the right amount of naltrexone blocking your opiate receptors to help get the beneficial effects of the naltrexone.
That's really, really important because I see that comment, from time to time on my videos where people are reporting, oh, it did nothing for me or it didn't work for me. And I often want to know so much more about their experience. But to your point, maybe they weren't taking enough or they weren't taking it at the right time or they didn't give it enough time to work. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
And I just want to say one other thing to that point that there's a variety of reasons why you might not be getting the kind of success from naltrexone that you expect or that you hope for. One of the factors could be related to that you don't have enough naltrexone in your system for it to be effective. And the question then comes up, how do you know if you're taking a pharmacologically effective dose? And the questions I like to ask my patients are things like, when you normally drink, what effects do you get from the alcohol? And most of my patients will report that initially when they drink, they get full of energy, they feel high, they feel euphoric. And then that gradually transitions more into feeling more tired or fatigued. With naltrexone, they immediately go more into the fatigue phase of the effects of naltrexone. And so if you're getting that kind of response when you drink, naltrexone is probably doing the job it's supposed to do. And if you're not having good results, there may be other factors involved. But that's sort of how you know the naltrexone is pharmacologically active to help you with your recovery. And I have to say that in general, social supports are really critically important for people in their recovery. I mean, that's one of the things that I think AA gets right. That that when people are have peer support or a coach or someone can help hold them accountable, but give them support when they begin to lose hope, that's very important, critically important in terms of people getting better from this disorder. And so I recommend, from the beginning, we recommended that if people go on naltrexone using the Sinclair method or daily naltrexone, or if they get a monthly injection of extended release naltrexone, that in addition to using the medicine faithfully, it's also important to have psychosocial support to help you get through the process.